So I'm delighted to be joined today by two people who I've gotten to know over the years who know a lot about a topic that's still almost a foreign language for a lot of commercial bankers. And the topic is sales enablement. And we're going to define that in a minute. But I'm delighted to welcome Kathryn Bittner, currently a Senior Vice President with Bryn Mawr Trust in the Philadelphia area, and Danielle Blackburn, who is a Vice President in the digital banking area at Zions Corporation. And I'll ask them at the start just to give a little flavor for how they got involved in this topic of sales enablement. So Kathryn, how about a quick intro from your side?
Sure. So I think when I count it all up, I'm at 28 years in banking in some way, shape, or form. 20 years of that has been in sales and sales leadership roles, whether that's in retail banking, business banking, commercial. And the rest has been in this mysterious area of sales enablement. And I think I got there because it was just a great opportunity to take what I learned, what the pain points are, what help I wish I would have had, and take that to the organization to deliver those things to the sales organization.
Very good. Danielle, what about you?
So I've been in banking for almost 14 years now, and probably 10 of those directly related to a sales enablement capacity with the front line. I would say my stepping stone into sales enablement was taking a manual Excel pipeline tool and modifying the formulas and then saying, why are we doing this? This needs to be in our CRM. And with that, one of the EVPs of the organization was like, hey, we need you over here.
Well, I think they were smart to realize how you could add value. So in talking about sales enablement, we have to define the term. And it is one where, clearly there is a role that involves taking ideas from senior management and implementing them to enhance the sales or revenue chances of the organization. But Danielle, how would you define sales enablement?
Simply, I'd say it's providing resources to your leaders and your front line to enable them to make sales and better support their customers.
Okay. Kathryn?
Agree 100%. And, I do think there's, a couple areas that it touches. I think it's making sure you have the right infrastructure in place, the right defined processes, and also those tools. And those tools can take on a variety of shapes and forms. It's access to information to help them deliver for their clients. It's access to content, to customer insights, and just to good information and tools to use every day.
Yeah. How is it different? I mean, when we talk about these things, I think that a lot of times people take this and they think, well, that's like training, right? What's the difference? Kathryn, you want to take a shot?
I'll start. There certainly is a training component to it. It's much broader than that. And I mentioned some of the areas. Training's a part of it. When we talk about those tools, there can be some coaching involved. But it really is, I think, solving problems, creating tools and resources that kind of take care of those bottlenecks and things that happen, anything that gets in the way of delivering that good customer experience and being effective in those conversations, finding those pain points and finding a way to fix it, quite frankly.
Yeah. Danielle, is there anything, I mean, when you and I first got to know each other, you were the one that was sort of the go-to person for executive management. So you had a sponsor. They actually had several sponsors, as it turned out. How important is that to the role of someone involved in sales enablement?
I'd say, especially in a community organization, that it's extremely important because you're possibly one individual completing the sales enablement activity that some may not understand. And so they kind of wonder, what are you doing over there? And you're kind of let free to ask questions, listen to problems, take those problems and run over and try to create solutions that you bring back. And they're like, what are you doing over here creating these processes and these random tools? But when you bring it back and it helps provide a solution to these problems that they were discussing, then they start understanding what you're doing. And so having the support of those managers who understand what you're doing and can give you some of that direction, but also support to let you just run off with something is extremely valuable, because they're giving you the leeway to be creative, and I don't think you get a lot of that these days.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. So let's bore into a couple areas. I mean, this is a big topic, and we're going to go fast through it, but we're going to look at 3 specific things that good sales enablement programs tend to get involved in banks. One is onboarding new hires. A second thing that we're going to talk a little bit about is the infrastructure kinds of initiatives and things that are involved. And we're going to talk a little bit about coaching. And in looking at all these things, there are a lot of ways you could approach it, but I think the main beneficiary of a lot of the work that Kathryn has done over the years and that Danielle has done are these first-line sales managers. And so thinking about what they can benefit. Everybody benefits, you know, senior management for sure, the frontline benefits, but the first-line sales managers benefit a lot. So Kathryn, can you talk a little bit about onboarding new hires in your experience?
Sure. And you're right. The biggest benefit is to those hiring managers, those sales leaders, because you can really create something where they're freed up to do what they do so well every day. They're able to spend their time getting on a joint calls. And if you think about this newest relationship manager that just came in, how critical it is to get out early on those first conversations where they're representing now your bank, and telling the story and helping them and teaching them how to do that. And the connections locally, right? That's what that sales manager can focus on. And what you can take away and what you can centralize are things like that training component that you talked about. And one of my favorite things is actually we developed a welcome kit for the relationship managers. And this is not your laptop and your cell phone. This is, it came with a playbook that talked about, some of the key processes, key contact information, who to call for what. But it also came with that package of branded stuff, that shirt, the pen, the portfolio, whatever you needed to get out. So literally the first time you interacted, externally, you are representing the brand and the company well. Sometimes that seems like a small part, but I think that was just a huge thing for folks coming in on day one and feeling good and getting engaged quickly. The second most important thing that I think we did well was creating informal connections, or just connections in general across the internal organization, creating opportunities for the newer relationship managers to talk to marketing teams, to product development, to credit and to credit officers, to really understand, right, from their new company's point of view, what was important, the direction that we're going. But just as important, I think, was for those groups to be able to get feedback from those new employees that helped us then tailor what we did next, kind of based on our learnings from new folks joining the organization.
Yeah, that's good. Anything, Danielle, you would add based on your experience?
So I feel like with the sales enablement role, it allows you to take that onboarding and extend it. So a lot of times onboarding is a very specific short-term time frame. And within sales enablement, you get to learn those relationships, learn their strengths, their weaknesses, and then you get to continue that and support them with that throughout their journey as being a banker at your organization. And if that's getting them in front of, again, credit early and letting them learn what is it going to take to get this deal through credit, and having those conversations consistently, and then also reminding them what are the tools that are going to help get this deal across the finish line, and helping make sure that they understand, because their deals don't come immediately as they start. They come a few months down the road in the commercial or real estate groups. And so being able to support that through that long-term journey is ideal.
Yeah, and if you put the backdrop of what we've been living with over the last 18 months, we're talking now in September of 2021, the pandemic has made it much more challenging. I mean, there's actually research that I've seen as recently as yesterday from reputable sources who say that it's taking a lot longer to onboard people. And part of that is because, distances make it difficult for people to do the kind of walk in and just help people while they're sitting at their desk, kind of walk around coaching. So in many respects, having a partner in sales enablement who can take on some of these additional responsibilities is going to even be more important. I am curious, in this, Danielle, you sort of led us into this area when it comes to coaching more experienced bankers, or maybe coaching isn't the word. You've had some, I know you've had some interesting experiences trying to help the front line with their own sales strategies.
Yeah, I would say that experienced bankers, it's really a collaboration with them, and sitting down and asking a lot of questions will lead to such great ideas that then you can take and run with, because the banker is not going to run with those ideas, but they can come up with them. So a lot of times in my experience, I would sit down with these experienced bankers and ask them so many questions related to what do you not understand, or what's not coming easy, or what's taking too much of your day. And then as they share more and more information, you can go down this road. One time I had learned that there was a commercial real estate banker, and she didn't know where to go for some financing of some tools for this new business that they had, and the funny part was the leasing rep sat 3 offices down from her, and she just didn't know. And so with sitting with her and then sitting with other bankers, it became more of a constant that there were a lot of different partners, and to stay on top of who to call for what, and what every service, product or service offered was really difficult. And then taking it further, you then go speak to the managers and find out additional information. One of a really strong coaching manager that I would talk to a lot, she mentioned it's really hard for a banker to talk about every product with such knowledge, and it's difficult to go talk to your customer if you're not an expert on it. And so what we ended up putting together was basically a brochure that talked about all these different partners, who to contact, what do those products offer to the customer, and then also what are great questions to ask that can lead into identifying if it's going to be a great opportunity for this customer or not.
So it sounds like Product Partners for Dummies or something like that. Maybe there's a book there. Kathryn, what's your experience in working with more experienced bankers?
Sure. I think I'll talk a little bit about maybe experienced bankers and all this great new technology and platforms that are, hitting us left and right. And as an experienced banker myself, I know that it's sometimes hard to quickly adapt to some of these new tools and things we have. But I was having a conversation recently with an executive in a commercial division, and we were talking about some of the experienced bankers and how it was going in terms of implementing a new commercial lending platform.
Which we won't mention, but it's called nCino, because that's what everybody seems to be implementing.
Are there any others out there that are being implemented?
There are, in full disclosure, there are, but not as many as there used to be.
And as we know, it's transforming, but you have to have people willing to be transformed. But in this, as we were talking about the experienced bankers on their team, they had one that, really, tried to avoid it. I can have other folks, my portfolio manager, portfolio sister, maybe do the data input for me, keep the deal moving. I'll just kind of keep doing things the way I always have. And the negative impacts that came from that, it took longer to get deals done. Some of their other portfolio administration started falling behind because of maturities and annual reviews and things along those lines. But in talking to them, she also had another experienced banker that looked at it differently and said, I've heard this is great. I'm going all in. I'm going to learn how to use this. I'm going to do better for my customers. And lo and behold, that was the experience that they had, and their support team was able to continue to do all the other things that they, needed to do. So what it highlighted for me is the importance when you are embarking on introducing a new system, especially to that magnitude, pulling in those experienced bankers early. They have a lot of great ideas, first of all, of pitfalls, way to do things. And then you build some advocates, some subject matter experts from them, and then can really use them as you're rolling it out across your teams to talk about why they love it and why it works well for them, so they can talk, peer to peer with other experienced bankers.
So it's interesting, we have chatted before we talked about this, and I think one of the comments was, that's what we're trying to encourage our bankers to do with their clients. You're doing the same thing. If you think in sales enablement, maybe you have multiple clients. You could argue executive management, you could argue sales managers, you got the line. But you have to do the same things. You have to find out you have to pre-sell ideas. You have to figure out what are the problems potentially that they're experiencing. And with launches, and launches could be anything, new loan system, new CRM, it could be a product launch or an emphasis. One of the things that's interesting to me about sales enablement people who are good is that they are generalists, but with a wide grasp of all the things that are going on. And I don't know, Danielle, when you think about, some of the things you were doing in working with experienced bankers, you highlighted, making connections, you were helping people. Were there any other things that you observed that was helpful?
I think one of the biggest things you can do for the bankers is making data or tools actionable.
Yeah.
If you can get it specific enough that they know exactly what they're supposed to do from it, then that's helping them. And you're giving them information on leads or whatever direction it is related to a tool, but they have to know what their action is from it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think one of the things that is misleading, a lot of people think experienced bankers aren't looking for coaching. I think they are looking for coaching and help. And some of it comes in the form of, how do I take advantage of the things that the bank is making available to me?
Yeah.
How can you help me, connect the dots and figure out how to move things forward? So I think they're pretty receptive. How about senior management? The sales manager role, the first line sales manager. You guys have both had great experience, and I know the people you've been supporting, and they value it tremendously. Kathryn, what would you say is the key to being supportive of a first line sales manager?
Well, first, the key is that you're aligned, right? You're aligned on the big picture, the strategic direction you want to take the organization, and that's key, because once you're there, then it's a lot of just good pure conversations around what's not working well, what is working well, where can we best support the direction that we want to go. One of the examples is working with the senior leader for the division, and at the time there was no relationship development strategy in place, right? There were no expectations for the relationship managers with how often you'd contact your customers, how you do relationship reviews, work with partners, and we wanted to just to start that. So it started with that senior leader agreeing on kind of course of action, minimum expectations, and then I took that and worked with the sales managers and helped them work together to develop their plan for their teams.
Yeah. Yeah. Danielle, I watched you work with a number of frontline sales managers, and I think you could probably write a book on how to do this stuff. But what are your takeaways from working with the first line sales manager?
Again, I go back to the collaboration piece. I think being in line and having an understanding of the goals of the division is very important, so that you can make sure the tools and the reports, the metrics are aligning to what that vision is. But also, what is it? They are so busy. You get a sales manager in that sales manager role, and it seems like everything besides sales starts getting thrown at them.
Yeah.
And so how do you get them in a spot where they can actually focus on the things that they're good at? And so one of the examples that I have is that I sat down with some managers, and they said, it takes me longer to pull together the information to understand what's going on with my banker to have a coaching conversation than it does to have the coaching conversation. And I was like, well, let me see if I can help with that. So I would go out and I would gather on a monthly or bi-monthly, depending on the banker and who's being coached. And I would pull all of that together into a banker book for the manager. I would go through all of the information, and I would highlight anywhere where there were gaps possibly in the sales process that the data was showing. And then I would include any tools or pieces of knowledge that might help with that conversation. They would then take that, have their coaching conversation, and then I would gather that back, and they would have notes in there. And if there were notes that led me to having to go get additional tools or go follow up and help the banker with other things, I would do that. But that seemed to help them by taking a ton of time off their hands with organizing this information so they could have this great conversation. And so I thought that was one of the more valuable things that I was able to provide.
Yeah, without a doubt. And you actually participated.
I'm sorry, I have to say, like, I just love that example, Danielle, and you're right. I think sometimes people take, for reporting's reporting, Well, no, if you really understand what people are trying to do with the information, you can really build out reporting and information that's delivered at the right time, that takes all of those headaches away, and they can focus on the conversation and not collecting the information they need. That's a huge lift.
So here's the last question, and I want each of you to respond to this, because you became very valuable sales enablement resources in your organizations. And in both cases, I'm not sure they knew what they were looking for. If you were trying to coach a senior manager in a community bank, regional bank, in the commercial side, and the person is intrigued by this, this role, which is, it's certainly, as we've discussed, involves a lot of different pieces. You have to understand marketing, you have to understand products, you have to understand credit, you have to understand organizational dynamics, you have to be a psychiatrist, among other things. What kind of person should that individual in a community or regional bank be looking for? So I'll let you give a first shot, Kathryn.
Oh, wow. Well, me. But no, they should be looking for it. I think it's the ability to collaborate, to look at the big picture, to have more of a strategic look down the line focus, be able to collaborate, network across the organization. I think those are some of the key things. But in short, as I say this, it's a lot of the same skills you might look for, right, in your customer facing team, because you need to ask questions, understand what problems are, deliver solutions that people may or may not know they have, just like we do for our business owners. But I think the other piece is that the ability to look strategically and and really collaborate across an organization.
Yeah. Danielle, what would you say?
I would agree with everything Kathryn said there. I mean, finding someone that understands strategy, understands data. I think having a data background is important, analytics, and then also someone that gets things done. If you're gonna have ideas that flow, you can't just be the idea generator. You have to actually complete stuff, and be able to be process oriented. A lot of the work that I do is asking a lot of questions and understanding and building out what the process is, and then looking at that process and analyzing, where could we fix this? Where are the gaps? Where is it taking too long? How can we shorten this? So it's a lot of skills in one role.
Well, I didn't tell you guys, this is actually a first for the NedTalks. Up until this point, all the NedTalks have been me talking with one person. I'm talking with two, and I hope people who listen to this realize that I wasn't looking for clones, but Danielle and Kathryn are really good at what they do. If you don't have a sales enablement function in your organization in the commercial and business banking sector, and you want to talk more about it, I'd be happy to introduce you to these folks. But I do want to thank both of you. Thank you very much, Danielle. Thank you, Kathryn, for participating in this first NedTalks that was actually a joint collaborative effort.
Thanks for having
Thanks, Ned.
having us, Ned.
Great.